Hey listeners, it's Alex, your host of EOA, Entrepreneurs of Asia, a show where we talk to founders, investors, and entrepreneurs impacting the Asia region and beyond. A few months back, I got a chance to sit down and talk with my good friend Daniel Torres, who is part of the Easytaxi gang. Since Easytaxi, he has helped scale many more ventures, from Eatigo to Zyllem and the well-funded neo-telco Circles Life, backed by the likes of Founders Fund and more. There's always a ton of coverage on the grind of startups and their successes. Less so is there any coverage on the failure aspect of entrepreneurship, and even less so, what are founders and entrepreneurs doing in between failed or successful startups? How does one get started on the next idea, or what does this space look and feel like? Today, we briefly explore this time of pause and reflection. We talk about meditation and look back on some of Daniel's journey from starting in Silicon Valley to launching his venture scaling career in Latin America with Easytaxi to building Playbooks for the likes of Eatigo, Zyllem, and Circles Life. All companies which had some form of success and raised millions of dollars in capital to grow. In the end, where will Daniel end up? Latin America, United States of America, or Asia? Where's the most exciting place to be right now? Stay tuned to find out, and as usual, feel free to skip around to different chapters if your podcast platform allows it. Let's listen and dive right in. Welcome to the show, Daniel. How have you been?
Hello, mister. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been how long since the last time we talked?
Maybe 6 months, I would say.
6 months, yes. This was when you were still based in Singapore?
Man, maybe Australia, actually. I don't know. I have moved so much that it's hard to know exactly when.
Yeah. So we have with us here today Daniel Torres, currently the CEO and founder of Nothing, right?
Correct.
Yes, and I think that's something to embrace. You know, everyone's always talking about, you got to be on the next thing. What are you doing? What are you creating? What's the grind, right? But that must feel good, right?
Man, it's good. It's good to take a break, and I think it's also good just to, spend time with family. I think in general, the whole COVID-19, I think a lot of people rethought a lot of stuff. And I think a lot of people, they learn a lot of lessons, definitely. So I think it's one of those big changes. And it happened to me, actually,
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of our guys in our cohort from Easytaxi and Rocket Internet feeling the same thing. Here I am doing a podcast with my friends, enjoying the conversations in life. But a quick intro before we move on. We could follow Daniel on his beautiful Instagram. I think it's public, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yes, Torrda, Torda?
Torres Daniel.
Torres Daniel. Yeah, and then Twitter as well, DTORRS, DTORS.
I haven't used that one in a long time. That was from my times in Silicon Valley, man.
Yeah, but I guess you're still keeping up with social media. You're still writing these days, right? You're active on Medium under the pseudonym DT as well, right?
Well, the thing is, I decided to take a break. Basically, I was traveling constantly. I was part of expansion teams. I was in Australia with the neo telco Circles Life, based out of Singapore, and yeah, man, it was part of pandemic, part of also a bit of tiredness, a bit of burnout, you can call it, and decided just to take a break. Sort of, I think it's also the age. I'm 37 at this point, so you want to do. You want to sort of rethink the things that you're doing a little bit and maybe plan for, let's say, the next 5-10 years and so on. So
yeah, definitely. I feel, a few years ago when we were leaving Easytaxi, I thought we had a similar conversation, right? We had to probably focus on the things that we knew would have, bigger, deeper impact, things that we actually cared about. We toyed around with some ideas that we didn't really actually care about, so it never took off. So I don't know. I guess you've been continuing that journey, right?
Yes. I mean, I always been a person that wants to try a lot of different things. So that might be a good and a bad thing, right? I hit a lot of walls, and that's the way I learn, right? But I think some of the learning that we got from Rocket Internet, right, was sort of like you feel like you're able to create. So you become more a creator than just a doer for the sake of doing, right? And if you see, let's say, our generation of Rocket Internet, I think a lot of people maybe share the same feeling of like, what do I do next, right? Like, do I move like horizontally to like in positions, or do I create something myself? Like, what do I go from here? So, yeah, I guess that's a bit of the big question every time you go into a project.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things to unpack there. It's interesting you frame it that way, because Rocket is famous or infamous more for execution versus product, or, you know, just getting things done good enough, scaling it big with resources behind it versus, which is a little bit different kind of a creator mindset than what you'll see from other countries, other regions like Silicon Valley, right? But I guess I could see your point at the same time. Is like, you know, we should be doing something. And how that manifests, then I guess it's up to how do you interpret it. And I guess your version of interpreting that is through creation, right?
Well, what I mean is that you feel capable of starting your own business. You were part of a generation that, I mean, yes, you were using someone else's money in a way, right? Or funding, but you built a business, right? In your country, in your city, and so on. So I think from that, it's actually sometimes it's hard to just go back to, let's say, a 9-to-5 sort of regular job, and yeah, I think that you have that question of like, what do I do, right? Do I go to that regular job, or do I stay as an entrepreneur, basically?
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I guess on the flip side, right, what happens is a lot of people who look at you don't understand your skill set and what you can do. You're kind of seen as a generalist who doesn't really maybe contribute specifically to one thing, and people have a hard time placing you. Do you find that to be true, or do you think that doesn't matter as much these days?
No, I think that's 100% true. You become this person that, in a way, yes, knows a lot about, or a little bit about everything, but you're not like, I don't know, like a data scientist, and you went to school for this, and I don't know, you're like building your career from there, right? And you can feel it whenever, I don't know, whenever you're going to apply for a job, basically, and then they say like, okay, we're looking for this particular skills, and you're like, well, I know a bit of that, but am I an expert really, right? Should I be an expert in order to apply for that? So yeah, definitely you can feel that.
I mean, at the same time, I feel like, I don't know if this is hubris or not, but if you are applying to a job with a specific skill set, I believe most of the people in our cohort would have the potential if they had just focused on it. And I've seen this happen a few times, you know, like a few guys are hired almost close to the founding level, senior management, but they have to focus on one area, but they're able to perform very well according to their skill set, even though it's something very technical and deeper. It's just that, you know, before you're forced to be very generalist when you're scaling early stage. It's not like they lack the ability, or, you know, that they can't do it.
True.
And I think that, so the hard part is, you know, like, I guess what you're saying is one thing is you have to choose that. But at the second time, it's like, how do you see yourself selling it? And does that feel disingenuous, right? Because you're trying to get the job at the same time, or what has your experience been around that? Because, you know, ever since Rocket, you've jumped to quite a few different companies, from Zyllem, Rocket Uncle, to Eatigo, to Circle's Life, right? So how had you positioned yourself? Or have you always sold yourself as a generalist and people accepted you? Or did you just feel like you just had to change who you were and mold it to get the job?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because, in a way, let's say within that generalism that you have, I've been sort of the guy that takes companies from 0 to 1, right? It could be because they're either starting, or because they're expanding to new markets and so on, and they need that person that obviously, in a way, is not afraid of like have a white piece of paper and like figure things out, right? Um, but at the same time, and again, this is part of why I took the break, was because I didn't know if I wanted just to be that guy. And where is that leading to, really, right? So I was asking myself these questions of, like, I mean, you're basically a hustler, right? I mean, at that point, and I was like, oh man, maybe I need to rethink things a little bit, and I think I'm in a good time to do so as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You kind of get typecast. I mean, one, it's a very rare and harder specific skill set to kind of do what we've done and to continue to do. At the same time, you keep getting boxed in these things where there's a lot of money chasing too few good deals, especially in the Southeast Asia region, the Asia region, right? And the one upside is that, there's no shortage of people always coming to you every few months or so asking you for the next venture to be the next country manager, the next founding guy, the next venture partner. Oh, this telecom wants to do this, right? But then, like some of my friends, like, even though like much earlier cohorts, similar or some different paths, they look at my CV and they're like, "Oh, you're just a rent to CEO, aren't you?" And like, that's just like, that's like, it is, but it isn't. Right? It doesn't feel good to view that. So I understand the need to either just focus on something deeper, cultivating something or changing a mindset. And I guess one of my other friends that also mentioned this is that I think there's a period in your life where you can kind of do that kind of job that we've done for a certain time, but you kind of have to grow beyond it to start building things either for yourself or for society at large, or creating actual value that's sustainable in longer term, right? And I think that's where a lot of the people in our age or our group are kind of at. And it's kind of time to pass the torch to the young guys who kind of did what we did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, or you can do it differently, right? Like you can be the head of international, just managing those guys, like helping those, let's say, new kids on the block that want to go through the same experience that you went through with, let's say, Rocket Internet, right? So, I mean, it is just a matter of like, I think consciously deciding in a way what you want to do next, or what sort of path you want to take from here. And man, I don't know, for me, it hasn't been easy, to be honest. Like, I don't know, maybe for some people it's easier, but I'm like, I could do this and I could do that. It's like, sometimes there's so many options,
Yeah, so many options is not always the best thing. It makes it more existential. Exactly. And I know exactly what you mean. Like, the reason why I didn't stick around Shopee, I was there when they were first launching Thailand. Before they'd launched internationally, they didn't even have like logistics or anything in place. And I saw the path, man. It was like literally doing the same thing again, but it'd be exactly what you're saying. Like you'd be at an international level, you'd be helping younger guys to be more strategic, you'd be less hands off. And that plus combined with the politics, I just wasn't interested in recreating the Rocket experience again. Mm-hmm. And I kind of shied away from it. And my take on this has been like, I don't know. I think it depends what you're looking for personally. But if you're looking for some form of success in this space of entrepreneurship, venture scaling or building, right? Returns of those, the odds are always against you. But if it follows the power laws, it's a 1 in 5 chance. But that means it compounds over a decade or more, which means you have to keep rolling the dice. You got to keep compounding that experience that you've had, and you got to keep trying and hopefully making smarter and better decisions so that there's a tipping point where you actually do start succeeding, and eventually within 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years, it does become exponential, right? So some people will get jaded and won't roll the dice anymore. They're like, I need my comfortable life and my salary. So then they go into these international roles. They go into these expansion roles, exactly. These kind of things. Yeah. So that's kind of how I framed it. And part of my exercise of Entrepreneurs of Asia, EOA, is, just focusing on one thing and going deeper and kind of see how it goes. If it's a hard problem, you keep solving it. Hopefully it opens more doors. But that's just my take. How have you been seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, right now it's a period of, I quit my job maybe 3-4 months ago, and I've been busy, man. I've been busy in many different ways. I joined a incubator for physical products. So I wanted to be able to see what it was like to launch a physical product. And I did that for like a couple of months, take things from, in a way, from 0 to 1 again, but in a different space. I've been always very passionate about like wellness and health and things like that. So I just wanted to try that out for a bit. I've been learning a lot about investing because I wanted, like, I felt like I never had time about, managing my, my money and visiting family. So I've been busy and you can say learning more than anything, right?
Yeah. It sounds like you're fully in the present and you're focusing on the things that you actually care about.
Yeah.
Right? We blew through our 20s, and I guess for you worked really hard through your early 30s too, right? So
yeah, exactly.
And I guess that's one of the takeaways is, and I guess that's part of, like the one thing we always talk about is personal growth, right? And I think for you, one of those big things has been meditation.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of meditation for a long time. I started when I was, I think, 22. I mentioned it in that Medium blog as well. And I think it's part of like, getting to know yourself, getting to express yourself, and kind of being honest with what you're thinking, with being present and all these sort of things. So it's gonna have like a personal conversation, and you can do it in many different ways, right? I feel like people have a lot of misconceptions about meditation, but it's definitely like super helpful whichever way you want to do it: walking, sitting, laying down, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, for you then, like if you say that, what exactly is meditation then?
Well, just what I said, is sort of having an honest relationship with yourself, being able to express yourself, like really listening to the words that are inside your head, and just creating a separation between those thoughts and your reaction to those thoughts. As simple as that, right?
Okay.
Which it makes you a more like calm and relaxed and aware person, basically.
And in the end, though, how do you know what that conversation is actually authentic and the correct things to be thinking about then?
Well, I think that there are some thoughts that are so repetitive. At some point, you start realizing, is this true? You start questioning it. You start seeing it just for what it is, right? It's a thought. It doesn't necessarily has to be true or anything like that. But you're thinking it for a reason. So you just have to like, it's a way to discover how you're processing information as well, right? And when you say there's no really right or wrong to think about when you look at things, right? It's just it's more about the relationship the relationship that you have with what you're thinking.
Okay, it's trying to come as close as possible to, because like the way I think about conflict in people is, there are two sides to the story, people on one end, people on the other end, and the truth is in the middle. Right. And ideally, a good conversation kind of gets you closer. It's never going to be the perfect truth. Right. But I think the closer you can get to that middle, I think the less friction there is, and the better relationships and communication happens, and things just work out better towards, I guess, common goals. Right. And I guess what you're saying is meditation is almost kind of like this exercise of getting closer to that state, I guess.
Actually, if you want to put in a more visual manner, it would be sort of like you're kind of looking from the top situation, right? So you're seeing the entire situation below, and you sort of pull yourself out of that specific event, right? So you can see it clearly. You can see it neutral way, like for what it is exactly, instead of you in the middle of like the shit show, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's a good way to actually help visualize it.
Yeah.
So how has meditation really helped contribute to your life from the early 20s till now then? What is the biggest impact?
Um, well, I mean, things like exactly what I'm doing at this point, right? Really rethinking of what I want to do, what are my values, what is success for me, how do I see myself in like 10, 15 years, what do I want to reach? Do I really want to like bust my ass and, create my own venture? Is that very important for me? Am I doing it because of the relationship that I have with people outside of meaning my friends or
seeing their success and what they're doing?
Exactly. Right? Or do I really want to do it? And if I really want to do it, then obviously you have to bust your ass or pay a price for it, right?
There's a sacrifice.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think in a way, being able to, like take myself out of, or have like a more of a balcony view of my life, then allows me to make better decisions and question myself all the time, right? On a day-to-day basis, obviously just being calmer and I don't know. I put in that post, for example, eating slower. I was a very fast eater, man.
Man, I should meditate more than two.
Exactly. So like small things like that will help. But
yeah, I mean, it just helps you be more mindful of just not letting the past 10 years slip by. While valuable and while you can reflect and reminisce and really enjoy those times that were really crazy, they just happen so fast, right?
Yeah.
And you do miss a lot of the things that either you forgot about yourself or you don't realize about yourself. And I think what you're kind of saying is, if you kind of help one way to approach it, I guess there's no one right or wrong way, but you can go on this kind of journey and try different experiences or revisit things, and actually think about it from, like you said, this bird eyes view to understand yourself better, to see what to do. And one of the topics you actually write about in your article is how do you actually get into it, right? And one of the ideas you present is achievement to non-achievement, right? You just got to start the habit with no specific goal. Like people often tie a goal to meditation and try to expect the result right away, but it's not like that, right? Start doing it.
Yeah, I think in a way it's just a reflection of everything, right? Like if you're so much, if your only, let's say, goal is the goal, right? It's just to get there, then you miss the entire process, right? And then when you get there, sometimes what you thought how it was gonna feel like, or what it was gonna be like, is just totally different. So, the article is just about this, right? And I just started, writing or sharing these things because are things that, I don't know, man, I do on a daily basis, and I just thought I could share with other people. It might be interesting for the ones that are starting meditation. Why are they starting meditation? For the ones that do it for, 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Why they're doing it that way, right? Like, what are the spectrum of the practice? Yeah. So it's just, let's say small things that are worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's relatively, for your second article, got a few hundred claps, so quite popular on Medium, for producing only 2 articles. So I'd say it's pretty good. People responded well to it, and I think it does help for anyone who's early on. So I guess we'll link the article in the description. But then, this idea of achievement to non-achievement, it almost feels like there's a juxtaposition or opposing contrast to the startup world, right? The point of the startup world and venture building is success and driving towards that, right? So how do you place achievement and non-achievement in our industry and how people need to keep driving forward towards success? And time is so limited and precious, where any things could make your startup blow up, right? Startups are extremely fragile. So how do you place that balance in the context of existing in both of these types of mindsets and worlds?
Well, I think in a way you always have to think of the fact that, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but in a way you're in the process, you're in that whole journey because you love doing it, right? So, I mean, I think some people might actually like sell their company and have millions of dollars and still feel miserable. So you really have to know why you're in the game in the first place, right? And the other thing is, I mean, when you don't have that massive pressure on yourself, I think you're like any journey is gonna be much more enjoyable. If you don't like it, man, then or you're just like, beating yourself up, it's just like, what's the point? Like, you just really have to ask yourself, what's the point, right? And so the whole point of, the non-achievement is, hey, I'm here in the process, I'm loving it, I'm learning every day. And it doesn't matter what happens today. If I sell it for like 5 million or 10 million, I'm gonna be cool with it,
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so since we're on this topic and section, let's talk about some more personal things. What are you currently reading, and what are maybe one of your top recommendations for reading for this current year?
So I'm reading this book called Bitcoin Standard, which, to be honest, I forgot who the author was, but maybe we can look it up later on. But like I said, one of the things that I wanted to learn was more about, investment and why Bitcoin. Like, I was really curious about the fact that like something like Bitcoin was showing up, and if I was gonna invest in it, like I wanted to understand a little bit about the technology, right? So I started reading this book, which the funny thing is, the book doesn't even really talk about Bitcoin, but until the end, the guy guides you through an entire process of like, let's say the development of money throughout history. And the monetary system and some of the flaws and some of the scary things that are happening at this point. And then obviously arrives then, right? So it actually has been really eye-opening and really cool book. I can just share the specifics later on.
Sure, definitely. I think that's something we'll talk about maybe later on, because I saw you also got a few certifications for Bitcoin, something you've been very interested in.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to learn about the technology because obviously I think you should definitely know what you're investing on.
Yeah. So I guess for the last question for the section is, since you've grown a lot from the early 20s to the late 30s, what are some things that the younger guys should be looking out for that you maybe regret, or something you should have focused more on when you were younger?
I think one of the principles that I like a lot is how you do anything is how you do everything. I think that's one of the things that I have learned throughout my, let's say, time with, either like professionally or personally. I think that would be one of, let's say, yes, I call it like a principle to tell a younger person, maybe sometimes focus on less things but do the few things a lot better. So I'm a let's say big believer on essentialism and what that brings. Let's just keep it at 2 for now.
Okay, so just keep it really focused. Focus on the essentials, and that should hopefully guide people in their earlier stages, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit more about your background. I don't know the full story. You are American, but you're Colombian. At this point, I probably want to call you Asian as well. So what exactly is the background, and how do you identify yourself?
Okay, so let's start I'll give you my full name. How about that? Right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Daniel Eduardo Torres Danilchenko. So my dad is Colombian. My mom is Russian. I grew up in Bogota. Um, I finished school and I moved out of Colombia to the US, to San Francisco specifically, because my dad lived there. Um, and yeah, I mean, through, let's say, Rocket Internet and the whole startup scene, I started traveling Argentina, Philippines, and all over the place. And at this point, I would consider I've been 7 years in Asia. So yes, I have much love for Southeast Asia at this point, you know.
Yeah. So in your heart, though, fully Colombian, you call yourself Daniel, not Daniel. Is that are you American too, or what exactly are you identifying yourself as?
Well, the funny thing is, when I moved to the States and I knew very little English at that point, I told one person, "Hey, my name is Daniel," and they were like, "Man, Danielle is a girl." So from that point, I just made it easier for everyone, and I said Daniel.
Daniel. Okay. Yeah. So you let Americans destroy your culture and your name.
It's all right, man. I think that Daniel is more international anyways, right?
That's probably, I guess that's probably true because of American soft culture, right?
And it will save me some time, you know.
That's true.
How do you spell that?
But do you feel like a minority everywhere you go, or where do you feel you blend in the best?
It was impressive the way that when I arrived to the Philippines, how similar the cultures were with Latin America in general. Like I didn't have any culture shock or any friction like leading the team in that sense. So that was that was impressive.
That's actually quite interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean in a way, like obviously when you're in the US, they usually ask you where you're from. Obviously there's some accent there. Not so much in Asia. People, I don't know. Sometimes people just think I'm from the US, and I always say I'm Colombian.
So you identify more as Colombian.
And Colombian, and yeah, definitely. I think in a way Asia is just easier in many ways. Like you don't feel as a minority, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so then that must have been interesting. If your heart is Colombian, and of course now later on you can appreciate Asia and the culture and be a part of it. But you grew up in San Fran as well, right?
I grew up where?
In San Fran as well.
Oh, I guess yeah. I mean, when I finished university here, let's say in San Francisco. I'm currently in Seattle, and that's where actually I got connected to startups, technology. That's where I think my tech profession started, right? My first job was with, actually, I don't think I have this on my LinkedIn, so you probably don't know it. But my first internship was with the marketing team with a company called iMeme. And they were a music social media network. So they were basically the competitors of MySpace. They were the first social network that signed all the labels, the music labels, and they were able to full stream songs at that time.
Wow.
Because if you remember the times of Napster, they used to chop songs 30 seconds and all this stuff if they had the rights. So the whole, it started exploring. I think they had like 2 million people at that point because people could full stream music and they could create playlists and share and so on. So that was a big deal, and that's where I started.
So it sounds like you were definitely. You bought into the whole Silicon Valley culture then. I mean, it's something you can't escape. Like if in New York you're doing finance or law, if you're in DC, you're probably doing, politics or law, right? And of course, if you're in Silicon Valley, you're probably doing tech. So it sounds like, going to university there, University of San Francisco, right? You bought into the whole world and you kind of got interested into tech that way?
Yeah, 100%. I think that internship specifically is, they were developing the first Android app, for their users. And I mean, those were the times that basically, I don't know, I felt like mobile started like blowing up. The first iPhone came out.
What year was this? This was 2000.
Man, this was what, maybe 2005?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, before. That's around the first iPhone, yeah.
Yeah. And so, man, everyone, like I saw the excitement all around. Then I joined Nimbus, the next company, and I was also in like multi-messaging communications app. And we used to go to like all the events in Silicon Valley, right? People were just like building and building and building, like it was unbelievable, right? And I just saw like, man, I mean, you see the passion of entrepreneurs and all these events and everyone talking about what they were building and so on. So yeah, obviously you're day in, day out in that kind of atmosphere, like it rubs all over you.
Yeah, so you definitely were brainwashed into it, and so you joined Nimbus, and you were iMeme, and what happened? Why did you join Deutsche Telekom, which is essentially T-Mobile for America or T-Systems across the world? I think.
Yeah,
the largest telecom company in Germany, right?
So the idea there was that after Nimbus, let's say Nimbus was this multi-messenger app, right? They were trying to compete with Skype. They were adding like MSN and all these chats in one list. And WhatsApp and Viber were also coming up. So they were the big players at that time. Like they were taking a lot. I mean, all these, let's say third-party or alternatives, they were taking money out of the telcos. So I spoke with Deutsche Telekom, and they were starting a business unit where like the whole project was about creating a WhatsApp, like creating these type of services to, let's say, gain some of those users back. And I mean, I was just like feeling right. I loved it because obviously it was with a strong company, right? We had all the money in the world in a way to like deploy this new service, and it just made a lot of sense. I mean, I was a couple of years with Nimbus trying to like open up the market in the US. So yeah, that's why I joined them.
And Nimbus, exactly what did they do?
So Nimbus is the multi-messenger app. So they had the multi-messenger app, and they had the voice over IP. So they were very similar to Skype, if you can call it. Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. So was Nimbus very big? Did they have a lot of resources?
Man, they were quite big. I don't remember the funding that we had at that time, but we were huge in India, Southeast Asia. Basically everywhere but outside of the US. So what these guys were trying to do was actually penetrate the market in the US, like really understanding the features, like what was it that the US market wanted. So yeah, it was actually a very big operation.
It was a big operation, but I guess compared to Deutsche Telekom, was it more corporate? Was there any frictions, anything that you didn't like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a way, when I joined Deutsche Telekom, even if they were trying to run this project as a small unit, all the decisions were managed by the Germans, and it wasn't as flexible as you would hope, right? Like it was going to be this independent project, and it ended up being like a lot of nothing.
Okay. So the typical case where a big corporate didn't have a strong owner to the top, which would have to be the CEO and the board, right?
Exactly.
And so they had this initiative and idea to kind of keep up with the buzz, but the innovation wasn't handled very well.
Exactly that.
And so you decided to trade one German master for another, then I guess.
Man, the funny thing is, I've been, like so fan of German companies, because at Nimbus, my direct boss was a German guy as well. So, then I jumped to Deutsche Telekom, then Rocket Internet, right? And the Rocket Internet part was actually really, really cool in the sense that, I mean, it was a totally different type of operation. It was outside of the US. So like the execution was very different, right? Like Nimbus was very online. I mean, obviously everyone in Silicon Valley has the latest gadget, they like really good internet and so on, right? Like, and when you get outside of the US and you go to like a third world country and so on, like obviously the type of operations that you have to do is completely different, right? So you go into Rocket Internet and Argentina, and then you're teaching drivers, you're at gas stations, just teaching drivers how to use the app, and that, I mean, the drill. So
I completely forgot about that. So you were totally bought into the idea of Silicon Valley, and you were excited and you loved it. What made you want to leave then, right? Like, it seems like, what was your idea of Rocket Internet back then, and what was so compelling? And I think your first stop was Argentina, right, for Easy Taxi.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were a couple of things. I was already like 7 years in the US. San Francisco can get a bit small, to be honest. And I mean, I always had a passion for like cultures and traveling and, visiting different places. And I also wanted to get some experience outside of the US, right? I mean, if there was an opportunity for me of like building a venture from the start, then that was actually very, very compelling.
I mean, you could have done that from San Francisco though, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it was just the right timing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I was a bit tired of San Francisco and the events and all this sort of thing, and I just gave it a try.
What were you? Okay, so what are the good aspects? What are the bad aspects? Like, it sounds like there must have been something wearing your soul down that either not a good fit personally, or there's a characteristic about San Francisco. Like, what are the bad aspects that makes people want to leave?
I mean, they say the average person in San Francisco lives about 5 years.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, because either you move to like Berkeley, Oakland, you find like a cheaper place, somewhere easier to pay rent. So I think those aspects take into account. A lot of my friends actually left as well. So a lot of people that went to Berkeley and so on graduated and left. So I think I'm thinking probably some of those aspects made a big influence as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It just feels like if you're not making it in a city, it could be very hard. It sounds like.
Yeah, man. I mean, you have to have a proper, let's call it a proper job in the city if you want to maintain that sort of lifestyle. Yeah.
And essentially that means you're bonded to a middle-class salary probably, and middle-class salary in San Francisco probably doesn't go very far.
I mean, I lived through like a boom of, let's say, jobs. Like Google was really strong in San Francisco, Facebook, all these. I mean, my roommate was working for Square, the payment platform, right? Man, and these guys were making like 6 digits easily, right? So at some point, San Francisco just started, like the rent just started to like take off. And I mean, it was, I think a lot of people were just leaving to pay a cool apartment in the city.
So I mean, that means you lived through pretty much the very early days before the resurgence, big boom, of big money VCs, unicorns, until now. And recently you visited back in 2020 from Asia back to San Fran to visit family. What are the big changes and differences you're seeing from when you were young, as a young person coming from Colombia to San Fran till now as an adult?
I mean, I think it's, in a way, it's unfair to compare those times because obviously the pandemic, I came in a time of like a lot of trouble here, right? In terms, if you're talking,
one can argue that
if you're talking politically speaking, I mean, in general, it's just like very messy, right? for not just for San Francisco, for the U.S. I saw a lot of poverty, to be honest. There's a lot of homeless. I mean, San Francisco, what I remember, they had a very, like a very generous program with homeless people. So I think a lot of people moved here. And in a way, I think we had a lot of that, but I feel like, it has gotten bigger.
It's worse.
And I don't know if that's like, let's say in a way, the class is actually like going down even more and people like in more financial trouble than before, or is it just that, I don't know, they moved from somewhere and like they just got here? Because I mean, to be honest, it's a very expensive place to be a homeless for everything, right?
I think you're probably one of the more qualified people to actually make a call on this, because you actually lived very early days and as a kid, and you have family there, and as an adult you're visiting. Like on podcasts and media, you'll always hear a lot of these really wealthy people based in Silicon Valley complaining of how bad it is, right? Is it just, first world problems, or are we talking actual really bad problems that need to be addressed and this really is crumbling?
How bad it is in what sense? In the sense of like in general?
I mean, in general, they do talk about the poverty, they talk about the politics, they talk about the infrastructure, they talk about a lot of things, right? It's just, you just hear nonstop complaining about people from San Francisco about how bad San Francisco is. But like as a tourist, when you visit, it seems great, right? So what I'm saying is you could have a different view of this, given your history and experience.
I mean, I don't think you can say it's like, I don't know, so bad or so crappy compared. I don't know. I lived in a lot of places and they have much more traffic and I don't know, let's say worse infrastructure and things like that. But I do feel like it's you can tell when a place is not progressing, but kind of going backwards. And I think I saw a bit of that, right?
So you're at that place.
Yeah, exactly.
Despite the huge amount of wealth and huge amount of talent, right? No one is actually solving social problems that could actually make better lives for everyone then, I guess.
Well, I just think San Francisco, California is just part of like a bigger machine, right? And if the whole machine is not working, then I don't know. I mean, at some point, I even heard of people like saying that California wanted to be its own state, right? Like it could be like its own country, basically. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I just think the whole country is like going through some serious changes, man.
Yeah. I mean, you could probably definitely feel it being back there. So let's move back to your story then. Like, how exactly did you find the opportunity in Argentina with Easy Taxi and Rocket Internet? How does that happen?
So I was working for Deutsche Telekom. So I was mostly on like, let's say I was in marketing mostly, and my friend Jaime, right? The guy that Jaime Aparicio. He actually flew down to Argentina because he was getting married or something, so something personal, and he found the opportunity there. He was building the team, and he said, there is the opportunity to build this. We need someone to help us on the demand side of things, and I took the call.
Okay. So your friend Jaime's from US as well, or?
So Jaime is Mexican originally. Okay. He went to Berkeley, and
I see. Yeah. Okay, so then he was just down there, just like most rocket stories. You're in the right place at the right time. They kind of pick you up when they're growing big, right?
Exactly.
And then so he sucked you in, and then you are in Argentina, where you've never been before.
Never. I mean, I'm South America, but it felt like like I said, I had more culture shock going to Argentina than going to the Philippines.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Was Argentina the country where the mafia was involved in the taxi, or is that Venezuela?
I mean, I would say in South America, like probably half the countries
It's
have
the
the
whole
same
thing.
issues. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was the case. Yeah.
What was the experience like scaling Argentina versus Philippines?
Well, it was just different stages as well. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
you can compare one to one. Argentina was a much earlier operation. We didn't have the monster that Grab was either,
Yeah.
which that added a lot of pressure, obviously. And man, I think that we were just learning a lot. Like there wasn't a playbook just yet, right? There
Yeah.
wasn't any. I mean, yes, Brazil was kind of doing the right things because obviously they knew some stuff already, but
Yeah.
at that time there wasn't the same. Let's call it a singularity or the unification of all the countries in South America. Right. So I remember like CEO Gustavo used to go there and be like, okay, like you guys are doing this, maybe I'll just tell the guys in Venezuela they might use this, and it was kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of communication was being established, and we were just learning every day. We try a lot of different things. We put posters in like bathrooms. We were handing out flyers like at night and stuff like that. So it was a lot of like just throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
See what sticks.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely was a lot of that in Asia as well. And I remember those early days when we were just launching Asia as well. And I mean, no one knew what they were doing. I even spoke to Gojek 2 years ago and for an international role, and they also even 2 years ago was it even like maybe less than 2 years? They didn't even have a playbook either. Part of the job was coming in to help, strategize and figure out how to scale and do it the right way. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that even though when you raise money, people just don't really know what to do. And I think Uber maybe did it very well because they hired a lot of rocket people, and at least outside of America, and they kind of saw how they were handling scaling this kind of sense, and parts of the DNA were probably there too, So it's definitely a very different thing when you want to scale big and fast and trying to figure out a playbook, and it's not so straightforward, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues that people have is trying to scale and create that playbook at the same time, right? Because which one do you prioritize? It feels like the playbook is going to slow you down, but it feels like if you don't have a playbook, then you're going to be like you're always going to be starting from zero everywhere. So
that's like the perfect segue because after Easy Taxi, you were in Philippines, right? And then I think you were approached by Zyllem, this was at the peak and boom of like logistics when everyone was throwing money in logistics like 5 to 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And they wanted to scale regionally. And then also later on after Zyllem, you joined Eatigo, which also had raised money, I think either before or during your time there and wanted to scale regionally. And even your most latest venture, Circle's Life from Singapore, wanted to scale regionally, and you went to Australia to scale regionally, right? So speaking of playbooks and in the context of these companies, like I don't know, what did you have to build a playbook? What was the story? Did they have playbooks in place, or how did you go about launching all of these ventures?
I mean, if I start with, let's say, with Eatigo.
So first, what is Eatigo?
So Eatigo is a restaurant reservation platform. They offer discounts based on time.
Yeah.
So it depends the time you go during the day. It's like a yield management for restaurants, basically an Agoda for restaurants. I mean, there were some principles already, obviously, some principles that I already had in mind, like, for hiring, taking a long time to hire, just make sure you hire the best people, was, I think, a key aspect of the launch in the Philippines, right? I think that was something that actually came from Rocket Internet. Hire slow, fire fast type of model.
Well, I mean, maybe later wisdom, but early Rocket was hire fast, fire fast.
Yeah, that's true. I think the analytical side of things, meaning making sure that you're tracking everything that you're doing, right? Sort of like if you deploy something, track it, then you make changes based on data and so on. I think that also came out of Rocket Internet. So actually, in a way, those let's say core areas I use for every aspect of all the other companies. So it was actually a very good foundation, if you ask me. Let's see, for Circles Life, which is a neo telco, we were able to create.
What exactly is that?
A neo telco, so like a challenger telco, they call it.
Okay, so they call it a challenger telco, but say a regular consumer, what does that mean to them?
So let's say you have the all telcos or the big telcos, the big telecommunication companies, right? Such as Singtel and so on. And you buy the bandwidth from them and you create a new brand with better terms and conditions, better pricing, much better customer experience and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So with these guys, we were actually able to create an entire playbook. And one of the main things was to be able to deploy. I mean, man, telco is a much bigger monster than, I don't know, this marketplace, right? You have regulatory aspects, you have like the product, I mean, the relationship with the telcos, because obviously you're buying bandwidth from them and so on. And one of the things that we were able to implement was just the ability to launch really fast, the most agile way possible, very lean in all the markets, with, I mean, saving money, saving costs, time, and so on, right? So that was some of the things, like one of the few things that we had to bring back from the Rocket Internet times as well, which was, doesn't have to be perfect. How do we launch in a new country in a very much leaner way? Yeah.
So what goes into the development of that playbook then? Is like you're sitting down with the founders, or is it like completely on you? How do you decide what goes into it? How does it get put together? And then how do you distribute it?
Well, you can. I don't know if I can curse here, but you have to fuck it up first, right? In a way, you kind of have to do, because obviously I wasn't from a telco background. So I go launch, I hire a full team and so on. And then you're like, man, first, this is so expensive. This is so slow. It took me like 8 months in Australia to launch the thing. Wow. And I don't know.
Why did it take so long?
I don't know if it was long, to be honest. I think for me, it was like super fast to launch a telco within that amount of time. But definitely it was expensive, because obviously you're learning all these regulatory processes and so on.
I see.
Right?
I see.
Do you need like customer service in every single country, for example? Do you need like a country manager? Yes or no? What sort of things can be centralized? So those things, I think once you deploy them and then you work through them, then in a way, yes, you have to fuck up some things in order to like implement those things into the playbook eventually.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying is you need a successful test case somewhere, and you take the best learnings and the worst learnings, and then you optimize to best practices into, I guess, I don't know, a deck or, a manual or whatever, right? But if you don't go through that process, you can't do it.
Exactly. You won't be able to know everything, but you have like, it's just like putting layers, right? Like there's some layers that, there's some things that you don't mess up anymore, because obviously you're learning from the past, hopefully, right? But obviously there are things on top of that, either because of the country, either because of the industry, either because of whatever it is, the team, that obviously you can only learn at the time of actually the execution.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is for early rock internet, that layer was just Oliver Somewhere himself. It was just like one man for hundreds of countries and cities around the world. And he was that layer until a certain point. And then he structured the regional team, and that regional team then would take a deeper dive and then combine it to a playbook, and then further distribute it to other launches and other regions around the world. Right.
Exactly. I mean, that was their ultimate goal, right? For Rocket Internet was just like have that massive playbook with, it doesn't matter the industry, man, we already know exactly how we're going to execute. See, because he had like a really macro view, right?
Yeah. And it had to come from the top, right? At least the first initial layers, where he probably had done it himself so many times that he was just an expert. And I think that's the important thing as a founder then. If you're a founder and you've actually gotten to the point where one country is massively successful, profitable, or at least exponential growth, you had driving that growth and better know how it works to see what's right or wrong for the next country. And then I guess you could scale your playbook from there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then what do you think about the actual, like when you were thinking about joining Circle's Life, what did you think about the value proposition? Like what, in my mind, if I heard that proposition, I would think eventually the telcos would just be like, oh, I could just price it cheaper, take away your margin, and then cut you out. Like, why should I give you more bandwidth when I could probably get the same user base if I just lower my prices, right?
Not necessarily. So you have to understand, I mean, if you see different industries, you see like what happened to the insurance industry, what happened to the financial industry, right? Like banks and so on. I think in a similar way, telcos were going through the same disruption, right? The fact that these are monsters that any change is actually really hard to do for them, right? Yeah. Like if you, as a user, you're going to sign up for a telco and then you have like the 2-year contract, right? And then you have this like legal agreement that is like 1,000 pages and, the small letters and all this sort of thing. It's not something that they can just like, hey, we're just going to cut prices and then everything's going to change, right? Because they're also afraid of losing what they have. Their biggest value is like these 2-year contracts, right? Like selling phones and having people like be there for the longest time. So I just saw in a way like the same idea happening in all this, insurance and the financial markets. And I just thought it was really, really freaking interesting. I really like it. That disruption is like, if you know about insurance, it's an industry that hasn't been changed, or it wasn't changed for like, I don't know, 110 years or something along those lines. So they were like asking to be disrupted for already. So that part was very interesting, and it made a lot of sense. And I mean, if you think for the telcos, they don't care if you're directly the user. I mean, they care that they're using your pipes in a way, right? It could be, yes, I mean, you might get a bit less revenue, but you also might steal from the other telcos as well, using this like neo telco. Exactly the same as like neobanks. The infrastructure, the infrastructure is from let's say the giants, but the face is this Revoluts and the rest, N26 and so on.
So what's exactly happening now? Is this really true disruption, or is this just going to fail because you're at the end of the day you're captured to their infrastructure? You can't grow beyond that, right? So
there's some dependency, yeah.
So
there's some dependency.
So I mean, does this not scale the way we think it scales, or disrupt it not in a way that we think so, or what's the idea here?
See, that's a hard question, man. Like, I've been looking at neobanks and what they really offer, and I don't know. Like, do you use as yourself? Do you use Revolut all the time? Do you use these neobanks? Like, are these fees like from the all banks are bothering you that much? Would you be willing to put $20,000 into a Revolut account, for example? Are their benefits good enough, right? Because, man, if that's the case, then I think in a way like crypto and Bitcoin, that's a much more disruption than just putting another brand on in front of you, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I could argue this for the insurance kind of thing you talked about, right? Because I talk about insurance a lot with one of my friends. The first guest we had, he's doing like kind of an insurtech kind of ambitions. And the one difference is that if you do make a vastly better user experience for insurance, I think that is a pretty big value proposition to be had. Because right now claims, and the general understanding of millennials, not very good of what insurance does and why you should get insurance, and just making it accessible and easy. If you really improve the experience in terms of the claims process and actually making it so that it actually works for both sides, the insurers and the consumer. Layering a tech thing where it's, digital, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm not too sure about banks. I think there's going to be a tipping point of mass adoption where it does make sense. You just kind of need those early adopters, and then you have to just make it really, really convenient. But at the end of the day, if it's a licensed bank from the regulators and it's literally no different, I don't have to go to the bank. I don't see why personally I wouldn't, but it's just like that. It's like the same problem with Malaysia with the current payment infrastructure system. And same in the US, why US adopted technology so late for credit card chips, right? You already the problem's already solved, and it's just so easy. Like, I don't need to use your mobile wallet because I already have a credit card and everyone has a POS, right? You're not really solving, and the incremental gain of value is not much. So it just takes 10x more effort to make it way better, the experience, for people to actually use it. And then, of course, it comes a matter of, will it be fragmented or unified? And ideally for payments, I think we'll have to be unified, probably same for banking, right? But it's just a matter of infrastructure missing for you to build up to that point, I think. But then what were we talking about? We were talking about telecom, right?
Yeah.
Telecom, I don't know. It's not my domain. I that one a little bit more skeptical. I don't know. I feel, unless you're telling me a neobank is just, the bank should just do it themselves. It's the same argument. If you're just using the infrastructure of the bank and their license, doesn't make sense. But if you've got your own license, I think it's more compelling, right? Maybe same for a telecom then. You would have to get to the point where you get so much scale, raise so much money that you could become your own telecom. Then I think the value proposition makes sense. Then you could build a better experience. Then you removed all that other infrastructure. Well, no matter what telecom, you're still tied to the infrastructure, right? You need the physical towers. I don't think you can escape that. So I'm a little bit more skeptical, I guess, on that sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's don't get me wrong. I think it's a positive change and disruption. What these industries are going through, right? I just don't know how. Go ahead.
I mean, the one thing that is, I think, happening though is that because of Circle's life, I think Singaporean telcos did have to adjust, right? That's what I heard.
Yeah, for sure.
There was pressure. There was actual pressure to improve services and experiences. So they did actually react, right? But I mean, if a telco is reacting to a neo telco using their infrastructure, doesn't that put pressure on Circle's life as well then?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think the fact that the big monopoly is facing some competition, then it helps improve services and terms for everyone, right? But yes, I think in a way, now that these guys are going to make changes, how is Circle's Life going to also make sure that they're moving forward as fast as possible so these guys don't eat them up, right?
So then I guess, I don't know, for all those companies you help scale regionally, they all raised money. They were able to convince some people from Zyllem to Eatigo to Circle's Life. Would you consider them as successes? Are they still around? Do you see them as failures, or how are you framing this?
You mean personal success or success as in the company?
Both.
Okay. Um, no, I think as a person from a personal level, I think it was definitely a success. I think I love the fact that I learned from so many markets and so many different industries. Like you said, like you start building this playbook, right?
Yeah.
And certain framework. So I think from all these experiences, um, I feel very confident on like scaling or launching a brand new
Yeah.
project. Um, from their point of view, I mean, man, Circle's Life raised quite a large amount of capital, and I think it's gonna be a long fight. I don't think you can
Yeah.
call it. I don't know. Like it depends what you call success, right? Obviously, they're
Yeah.
like in 4 or 5 countries already. They have like 500
Mm.
people. I mean, some people don't even get to pass the 2 co-founders and like a small team, right?
Yeah. True.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It just depends where you look at it from. But I think they're doing really well. They have a lot of potential. They obviously
Yeah.
they see the problem. They were able to convince someone that there is actually a problem and a potential
Yeah.
to disrupt a market. So yeah, you can call it success.
In the case for Eatigo or Zyllem?
Um, so Zyllem, they had to pivot basically from
Yeah.
a services company to a software company, and um, they in a way they had to start all over again. But what I
Yeah.
give Zyllem is the fact that they've been like fighting like tigers out there for the longest time. I think it's been
Yeah.
6, 7 years, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, man. You really have to know, that shows that you really have to know why you're there, because it's not a straight line. So
Yeah.
yeah, you could call it a success. And Eatigo, I mean, Eatigo was able. I think it's a beautiful model in general. I think
Mm.
if you ask them, they're like we reach profitability within 6 months. Um, like the model was very well. It wasn't one of those models that hey we'll make money later, right? From the
Yeah.
beginning, they started making some money. I mean, basically what the rest of the world is missing. Um, but I think obviously their model might be a bit soft, and they need like faster innovation, because now you have Grab or Lala
Mm.
Move and all these big guys, and if they launch discounts, then what's going to happen to them?
Game over, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
So Xylem started as a last mile delivery company. They pivoted into more software service for a
SaaS,
specific
yeah,
niche.
exactly.
Yeah, a SaaS company. And then I think I like what you said about that, is that I think most founders or people getting into the space, they don't realize is that it's, product market fit. If you don't have this strong understanding or conviction, or this, like you don't know that pain point right away, you're going to flounder for a while, for many years, and you're going to raise money, you're going to lose that money. And so, it's either, you're comfortable with that. And sometimes people get lucky, they'll hit it. And they think they can solve a problem. They actually find something along the way. Other people still will take time to. What happens is you have to find profitability faster, because no one's going to give you money anymore, right? Interesting with Eatigo is the other way around. They were making money, they got traction, they raised money, they did scale. But the problem is, if you don't innovate fast enough or keep up, the world around you, the macro picture, especially the food world, man, like food is still, it's crazy how insane relevant food is today. It's just like, it just doesn't make sense. Like food was like something, the first thing Rocket Internet came in and solved. I guess they didn't do it well enough, right? I mean, Food Panda is still around. They even IPO'd food around the world. They have Blue Apron in New York. I mean, sorry, in US, right? Food's massive. It's yet still today, it's still a dominating theme for these platforms, because it generates cash and is still a real thing, right? So, but I think, regardless, very, very good context to learn from your experiences from Zyllem, Eatigo, and Circle's Life. So Daniel, then I guess then what's next for you then? Again, we talked about it a little bit. Is there anything more concrete you could point us to, or is that like something that we shouldn't be worried about? Like we shouldn't pressure you to think about, or?
Look, I'm trying to make 2 decisions at this point, right? One is where exactly I'm going to live, because that was the thing we were talking about. Like, hey, when you have too many options, then where you decide, right? And man. I guess the other one is, what am I gonna do? Like, what exactly is a project long term? I mean, thinking 5-10 years I want to be involved in, right? I mean, we have those choices of like, do I start something or do I join another project and so on. I would like to make it a more, I would like to start like building some roots somewhere, right? And I think we spoke about this before, and that's why I'm just taking my time a bit more, visiting family, all these sort of things. I mean, I haven't been in the US, I haven't seen family for like 4 years, so just enjoying that time. But yeah, those two things are the things that I'm trying to decide at this point.
So given the chaos in the US, is that lower on the list, higher on the list? Do you feel nice being back in the US? Like for me, like I really want to know, because I've been away so long, especially with COVID, it's making it even longer, right? And when I go back, it's just like a short visit. What are your thoughts around living in the US? Is your heart still in Latin America? Do you want to come back to Asia?
I created this whole like chart of stuff and mind maps to like make the decision. But I think I mean US still a possibility, right? But it's not my first option, I would say. Yes.
I mean, yeah. Okay. So then I'm guessing Asia or Latin America then.
Yeah, I'm more towards Asia. Yeah.
More towards Asia. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm sure you have family and friends also in Latin America, and it's a very exciting scene. One of my friends in Malaysia from Peru, he moved back. He was in Malaysia for a long time, doing digital banking. He was with Rocket Internet as well. But he moved back to Peru. But I mean, like, it's exciting, right? You don't feel as compelled there?
Well, I in a way, like I feel like I left Latam 15 years ago already, almost 20, imagine.
Interesting.
So, maybe a bit more separate from that already. Yeah. And, man, I think in terms of like, if I think of, let's say, a market that is developing like super fast, I just feel a lot of conviction in Asia, right?
Definitely.
I mean, you're right. Latam is also, but for some reason, because I've been living also 7 years in Asia now, then I just feel closer to it.
Well, I welcome you to Malaysia.
Awesome.
I'll be here for at least a little bit longer. I don't know where to go, but you can come here. We could do ventures together in US and Asia together then. Sounds
good, man. I mean, I'm very excited about your the podcast and where you're taking it. Really cool to see you doing this, and like I hear a few of them, and obviously is also bringing some good memories. So it's cool, man.
Yeah, definitely. It's been definitely a pleasure. So before we wrap up, is there anything you want to plug? Jobs, work? Should people contact you for something? You're looking for partners or ideas or money?
I'll keep everyone posted. How about that? Maybe we'll make some more announcements later on, or we'll have a catch up soon. Yeah. And we'll do.
Yeah.
How about that?
Definitely. So we'll follow you on your Twitter. Hopefully you reactivate it and we can see what's going on, and then see more of your writings. We'll follow you on Medium at the handle is DT, the letter D and the letter T.
It's actually Torda as well. You can look for Torda.
Oh, Torda as well. Okay.
So I try to maintain the same everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll follow your writings, we'll follow your posts, and we definitely wish the best on your journey.
Awesome. Good talking to you, my friend.
Thanks. Thanks for your time. See you soon, hopefully.
Hey, listeners. Thanks for listening to another episode of EOA. If you enjoyed the stories, like the content, or learned something new, please share the love. Share this episode with your friends and family and spread the word. Help write a review on your podcast platform, as it helps us a lot. So what did we learn today? The space in between executing on ideas and solving problems is often a weird space. Sometimes we pause to reorient, sometimes we take too long, and sometimes we rush ahead onto our next project or venture without thinking. There are a group of people who like to think in two buckets, those who have made it and those who haven't. Sometimes we forget the nuance in the thick of it, but there does exist a group of entrepreneurs who are still on their journey, but are in the in-between. not everyone strikes it lucky on their first few ventures to get an outlier return on quote-unquote success. Why is this space important? It's a great opportunity to reflect and purposefully learn and unlearn in order to succeed next time. It's also a great time to reconnect and work with other entrepreneurial friends who are on the same journey that you never had a chance to work with before. Lastly, it presents a great group for investors to find a type of entrepreneur further along their career who may have a higher probability of success as long as those entrepreneurs are continuously growing. I hope you guys learned something too. See you guys back here for next week's episode. EOA out.